So welcome back, everyone, and we've got Hanna back today. I'm very excited to continue our series on her testimony, and we've had such amazing feedback. So again, Hanna, I just want to applaud you for how brave you are in sharing your story, and it's touching so many people's lives, and I think it's also giving a lot of people hope. So today, I actually want Hanna to share the story that inspired this whole interview series, because Hanna and I were sitting, we were doing a session one day, and she started telling me this story. And there's very few times where I sit and cry with my clients. And I remember when Hanna told me this story, I was so touched by it that I actually started crying in our session. And this was something that I thought, sure, we need to share this with other people. Because this could be anyone's story. So Hanna, without further ado, won't you please share that story, and then we'll take it from there.
Thank you, Alzon. I'm so happy to share this story with you. It is actually a very sad story, but it just shows that if you don't do something to stop the cycle, it's so easy to happen again and again and again. That's why we always talk about bloodline curses, what's happening in the bloodline. And like there can also be bloodline curses, there can also be bloodline blessings. And so you make the choice. So what happened was, I told you guys about the story where I ended up in the children's home, and the house that I later on chose to stay in was Mopani. And my house mother, Tanilda, she had a big influence in my life. I actually named my son after her nickname. She loved Amadeus Mozart's music, and so Desert that is my eldest son's name. But in this house, we were 18 daughters. It changed from time to time, sometimes 12, up until 18. And now I was the head girl in the house, helping my house mother with all the children. Her husband passed away and she didn't marry again. So many times me and Tanilda would sit and talk late at night, or just sit in the living room in the quiet darkness, because some of those stories was actually very sad. One of these girls that was with me in the house, I'm just going to call her Karen for safety of her privacy and everything. So Karen was one of these girls in the house. And after, she was younger than me, so when my time was finished in the house and I had to leave the children's home, I never saw her again for, I think, almost 20 years after that. And one day, so my life also went its route, and then I ended up at the CMR, it's the Christian Social Workers Network here in South Africa, what we're doing here. And I started working in January, and the social worker was on leave, the head social worker. So I went out with the auxiliary social worker to go and investigate a report. So we went to this house the morning. The thing that was reported was that there was children in this house that weren't going to school. They are not looked after, and they hear that the children scream sometimes and crying. So there's some violence in that house happening there. Okay, so we went there, me and the auxiliary, and when we got to this house, it was actually, I couldn't believe that people actually live like that. When you get into the door, the first window of the first room outside was out. There was nothing in, and they used actually that room as a rubble place where they actually move all their rubbish and throw in the dustbins and everything there. And you could clearly see from what there is that there's children and there's a baby. Okay, so we went inside the house, and against the walls, it was like brown mud marks everywhere. And I was cringing because, I couldn't believe people live like this. And there's children. And I have also children, so it felt terrible for me. And then the mother of these children came around the corner in this house. We knocked, we went in, and then she comes around the corner, and lo and behold, here Karen stands in front of me. I don't know who was more shocked than the both of us, me or her. It was actually I couldn't believe it was she. And I think she couldn't believe it's me. And we both were, what are you doing here? And so we went through the house, we looked at everything. It was rarig. It was very messy in that house. And you can see that the children wasn't really looked after. And there was a baby of, I think she was like 2 months or something. And then a little girl. And I held her for a while. And and so we went through this house, and we said to her, listen, Karen, it cannot be like this. You must clean up here. The messy nappies must be thrown away and everything. And then I spoke to her like I would have spoken to somebody that was family of mine, because she was family of mine, and from the children's home. And then I asked her, please, see what you can do. Get these children into school. They are going to take the children. They are going to take the children away. And so we left there, and I think it was almost a month or so later. But in that time, the social workers were speaking and said, listen, if she doesn't clean up this mess and the children gets back to school and everything, they will have to make a plan to put these children in safety so that they can go to school and be looked after. Because there was a lot of other things also not going well then. And then I remember there was a friend of mine who was with me in the church. She and her husband were married for, I think at that moment, 10 years or 11 years, and they couldn't have children. So they were on the list for adoption. They were approved and everything. All their papers were in at head office. Everything was right. But every time when a mother wants to put her child up for adoption, they put 3 options or 5 options in front of the mother, and she chooses. And every time my friend and them were not chosen, they were skipped over. And so they were so desperate. They had a room for almost, I think, 5 or 7 years ready for a baby to arrive. And they tried all the avenues. They prayed, they went for medical help, and the adoption was their only other option left. But they prayed, and they believed that God will give them a child of their own. So then when the social workers, when they started to speak about what are they going to do with the baby, because they have a place for safety for 3 of the children, 3 or 4 of the children, because there was this baby and the 3-year-old, and then there was 2 other boys. And so I said to him, listen, remember those people that they are approved for adoption. Why don't we ask them if they want to take one of these children, the baby in? They have a baby room, everything ready. And then they contact head office. They said, no, it's fine. So the day came when they went out again to that house, and the head social worker from Pretoria went also with, and they removed the children from that house. They phoned me and said, listen, phone your friend and tell them we're on our way, we're going to take the children, and then if they are ready to take in the baby. And then I started to phone. Oh my word. And it was terrible, because the first time ever, she didn't answer her phone. And I phoned her husband, I phoned the church, I phoned the pastor, I phoned the whole town. nobody could reach them. The phone was only ringing and ringing and ringing. And I didn't want to tell anybody what is going on because I wanted to break the news first. And the social worker wants to first talk to them about this thing. And so we couldn't get hold of them. In the meantime, these two were somewhere, Bloemfontein's area, whatever, for their anniversary. And they left the phones in the room and they said, oh, well, nobody's going to look for us now. We're going to just take a walk somewhere. I don't know. When they got back to the room, they found like over the 20 missed calls from different numbers. And she phoned back, and the head social worker, she spoke to them, and they were so excited. They packed their bags and they came all the way back. But on their way back, they were actually in a motor accident. A car was changing lanes, and he actually drove in front of them. And they had to go off the road in the bushes down there. The car did get some bumps and scratches and stuff, but they could get the car back onto the road and they could drive home. So while that was happening and they were on their way back, they brought the little baby to us. And sure. So if the tears are running today again, please just forgive us for that, because the story you can't actually tell without tears. So this baby, she was actually so dirty. The clothes was dirty. She stinked. It was terrible. And you actually wanted to pick her up like this, because you couldn't touch her. But so I went to the primary school to pick up my daughter, and we went, the only clothing store in Ruyten was Pep Stores. So we went to Pep Stores and we quickly bought blankets and baby soap and clothes and bum cream and stuff like that, and nappies. And we took her to the farm. We were staying on the farm at that moment, and me and my daughter, we washed her, cleaned her, put nice clothes onto her, and then they let us know, my friend, they are at home. In the meantime, also let the pastor know and all our church family, friends, and everybody. And I said to them, go and wait at the house for them to come. And so when they let me know they are there, we got into the car and we drove to their house. Now they are staying in a place where they help people for rehab. She's a sister, a nurse, and her husband also, he's working in an emergency unit. So when we drove into that place, I just started to cry, because I realized that, you know what, this is a full circle. I was 3 days old when my parents drove to the house and family were waiting for them. And here I am driving with a girl. It could have also been a boy, but it's also a girl, a little baby girl. And I'm on my way to give her to parents who I know loves the Lord and who will bring her up in the way of the Lord. And they were so desperately wanted to have a baby. And here today, this big thing is happening for them. And I have the privilege of doing that. So when we stopped there, the people were taking videos and photos and everything. And when the mother and the father, new mother and father, come around the car, and I hold this baby in my arms, and I said to them, okay, here she is. And they asked me, is she really ours? Can we keep her? Is it now for us to have? And then I said to her, yes, it's yours to have. So that was like a wonderful experience, but also for myself. I cannot really explain, but it felt like something came together, and it was like an explosion of emotions. And yeah, we celebrated, and up until today, she's there. I think she's now 6 years old already. Wow. And she only knows them as her parents. So,
Yeah,
So
and
yes,
this is what really touched me. I mean, even now I feel emotional just thinking of this story because, like you said, this is full circle. And it was so different for this little girl than it was for you when you were given up for adoption. But I think in all of this, the Lord allowed you to experience all of this because it brought a lot of healing to you as well. And yeah, and it's like a bittersweet story because the other side of the story is this mom that lost her children. And this mom, we don't know maybe where all of her children ended up being, but she was an orphan. She may have been thrown away by her parents, and she ended up basically throwing away her children. And this is, you know, it's the grace of God that has you in the life that you're in. Because Hannah, this could have been your story. I mean,
yeah,
the fact that you are where you are is just the grace of God. Because you both started off with no parents in a children's home, rejected, and your life turned out so much different. And I think that's where we see bloodlines coming in, where one generation after another, if someone doesn't start standing in the gap and repenting and changing their ways. And we know there's this thing between the epigenetic markers actually, which is a very physical thing, and then the spiritual side, which is the bloodline side. But if someone does not start changing their behavior and their actions and the way that they believe, we see this thing repeating. And this is what really touched me so much about this story is that that could have been your story, but you were on the
oh,
other
yeah.
side of that story.
And if you realize and know what is going on, and because when I had my firstborn, Desert, it was like I almost went into this like a lion to protect my cub and a lioness. So you start to want to protect. And one thing I just always wanted to give my children was something that I didn't have. I didn't have a mother or a father on next to the athletics, whatever, athletics tracks, or next to the hockey field. I didn't have that. I didn't have parents who encouraged me or cheered me on and said to me, go for it, you can do this, I believe in you, or let me help you, gave me some advice or anything. And I didn't have any advice. Even after school, choosing the person that you want to share the rest of your life with. You don't have somebody who can guide you or a parent who can protect you and say, listen, stay away from that man, he's not good for you. You're still young, even your mind is still developing. You cannot argue things out or reason things out for yourself. You need somebody to protect you. You need somebody to stand in the gap for you. And yes, it's like you said, it almost happened also to me. But you know what? I said, I'm going to fight for my children and with the grace of God. And that is what my name means. Hanna means grace. And
Wow.
yes, unending grace I have received.
Mm.
That's why Amazing Grace is also it's a very important thing for me. So
Anna, could
yes,
I
it is.
ask you something? Sorry, I
No,
interrupted you. So a lot of people that have seen our first two interviews contacted me and asked me, but how did you do it? So some people asked me to maybe talk a little bit more about your healing journey. So I usually tell the students in the academy as well, although I teach people how to read biofeedback in the body and how to deal with trauma in the body, and that's what I specialize in. I don't teach people that's the one and only thing. That's the answer to everything. I mean, you're a student in the academy as well, and you know that I always say there are different approaches, there are different tools. We need to honor everyone in their revelation and in their calling and in their ministry. And I say, sometimes I'll deal with a client and I'll say to them, listen, you need to go for counseling to this person, or you need to go to this person because they've got this discipline that they apply. So I truly believe that there are different things that come together in a person's life and bring healing. There isn't just one thing. So I want you to share a little with us, just quickly, what were the different things that you did that helped you to get to the place where you are now? And can I just say, no one's perfect, no one's arrived. There's still work in all of us. So this is a journey, guys. This is we're not saying Hannah's arrived or I've arrived and we're done now. We're all still busy working on wounds and stuff in our own past, but it's a constant process. But to get to where you are now, what were the things that you did?
So in the beginning, let me say this: when I just arrived in the children's home, I went. The social worker there asked me one day to come up to the office, and she sat down with me and she spoke a little bit with me, and then I went home, and I was actually just tired and emotionally drained, and I was never sent back for another session. So that was it for counseling. Okay. And those days there wasn't any other type of counseling that I think I could have asked for. It was before we all knew all of these other things like epigenetics and to renew your mind and everything. Oh, sorry, Alzan, my screen is shaking. I don't know if it's doing the same at your side.
Yeah, just stop your video and start it again. I see it's a problem on Zoom lately. There we go.
Sorry for that. Okay. So that was the first one. And after school, there wasn't anything else. So in the beginning, I must be honest, I didn't do anything. I just went through life and I made choices and I made mistakes, and I had to, there were really a time in my life that I was in a Philistine age era or something. But with the grace of God, I came back to him. And then one day, there was a friend of my cousin. They were a pastor couple, and I went to see her because that was like the end of the road for me. And I didn't realize really what was happening in myself and in my mind, and how I believe and see myself, and how all of these. And then she gave me a book that I read, and then I realized, listen, there's much more to what we really know, spiritually also. That's when I discovered Joyce Myers and Dr. Strydom and Dr. Henry Wright, renewal of your mind, the neurons in your brain, and to build new neuron waves and everything. It was a different learning school for me. So that was, I think, the turnaround for me in what I did. And
sorry, step one would be then acknowledging that you've got a problem. Because actually in the beginning there was denial. So we all go through that. We say we're fine, there's nothing wrong, I don't need help. So step one was actually realizing I'm not fine and I need help. So acknowledgement, and then starting to inform yourself, because then you started reading the books and you got the information. Okay, so then what did you do?
And then I went on this journey realizing that you don't have to struggle with any medical issues, because Dr. M.K. Strydom, I don't know if anybody knows her who's listening, but she wrote a book full of, what happens to you if you have bitterness in your life, if you cannot forgive, if you have strife with anybody else. These diseases that actually sit in your body because of that.
Yes.
And then I started to work that book through. And then I think it was 2 years ago, a friend of mine said to me, listen, because I was struggling with this menstrual cycle of mine and nothing helped. Even the doctors couldn't help me. And then a friend told me about you, quantum counseling. And then I contacted you. And then from there on, I started this quantum counseling and the sessions with you. And then you told me about your academy, and that's where I started and where I went from. And it's like delving deeper. So everybody knows about a pharmacy and a doctor, you know, about specialists and all those things. And that, like you said, have a place. You can go to a doctor when you need it. Please don't leave your medicine or medication or anything just because we tell you that if you sorted out spiritual stuff, then you're going to be healed totally. It's a process. Because like you've built up bitterness all these years in your life, or you didn't give attention to the hurt and the pain that you had in your life, it builds up. And it's like an onion that you peel off piece by piece, and you have to go to the core. And it's not a one session fix all. And I say that we all know that we are not just one thing. We are a spirit with a soul in a body. This body is just going to be here for a while, and then we are but the most important part of us is the spirit. And that is the thing that is going to leave this earth and go back to heaven. And in the soul, we have the will, the choosing, the feeling, and the memories. And we have to heal on all those levels.
Yes.
And I always say that you cannot do the one without the other. You cannot just drink a pill and say, oh, well, so if you struggle with anxiety, okay, just drink a pill. If you struggle with depression, drink a pill. And everything will be sorted. No, why are you drinking those pills? And why are you sitting with depression?
Yes.
Why
what
are you
is behind the symptoms?
Exactly.
Yes, because
so you have to go and look at the root issues of that. And like we are three different parts, you work with whatever you work with on three different parts.
Yes. So you would address the symptom, body, soul, and spirit. So that's what you did as well. You worked with the bloodline iniquity, obviously, to break this pattern in your children's life as well, and to deal with the spiritual stuff that you inherited. And then you worked on the soul in terms of inner healing and working with the woundedness in your soul, your thought patterns, the way that you speak and think about yourself. And then body work really goes back to dealing with the trauma in the body. So it's a holistic approach to the healing process then.
Yeah, definitely. And I will always encourage people to work holistically on all the levels with whatever you are struggling with. But the most important part is always to trust the Lord to guide you in the right direction. Because this didn't come, nobody told me this. It came in bits and pieces. So it's like almost going different levels of qualification. So you start off with this one thing, and then the Lord says, okay, now you know enough about this, then you go to the next thing. And like you said, there's always place for medication, natural medication, or going to a doctor. It's when you break your leg, you have to go for an operation, and you have to go get the whatever, what's inside of your bones, then the cast, then you have to go for physiotherapy, and then you have to maybe see somebody because you were in a motor car accident when your leg broke, and you have to
deal with the trauma.
So you have to work on all the levels, and that's where quantum, it's really helping to work with also with all these levels of, especially the bloodline. If we think now back to the story that I've shared with you, because I don't want one of my grandchildren happening the same thing to them. It can skip a generation. but it can come back again. So someday there must be somebody who's standing in the gap and realizing that you have to go very deep and you have to go in front of the Lord, laying all these things down and really be honest to yourself also. Because sometimes people want to be in denial. No, man, those things, Christ died on the cross for us. For why? There's no bloodline curses now anymore. You know, everything is forgiven and we're now under the new covenant and new promises and everything. So, but then
you should be living in the fullness of that. Then you won't see that pattern repeating. So we're not detracting from the work that Yeshua did on the cross. But I think there's a misunderstanding of what he did on the cross. So he came to save us from eternal death. He came to give us the gospel of the good news that death is not our final end, that there is resurrection, and that there is forgiveness for willful sin. But we still see all of these examples in the Word of God of people standing in the gap and repenting on behalf of the generations before them. So the iniquity of the generations actually change our epigenetic markers. So it's got a physical effect on our bodies, but it also plays out in generation from generation to generation in a physical sense. So Hanna, thank you so much for sharing this. And I think this was a very practical example for people to see how something like that repeats, and also to see how one person's life can differ from another, where they started all from the same place. You had the same handicap in life, but just making different choices ended up in such a huge difference in terms of how your lives ended up being. And I mean, like I said, your story is still being written. So we're excited to hear more from you. But thank you so much for sharing.
I just want to end ovals on with this one thing. You know, there was a story about twin brothers. And the one was an alcoholic and the other one was a doctor.
Yes.
And the one guy asked the doctor, why are you like this? And he said, because of my father. And then he asked the other brother who was an alcoholic, and he said, why are you like this? And he said, I'm like this because of my father.
Wow.
So you have the choice, and it always starts with being honest with yourself and realize that you need help and you can get help and you can be successful also.
Amen. And also deciding not to be a victim of your past, but to use it as a stepping stone and be a victor, not a victim. Because some people just get stuck as a victim and they blame their past instead of using it to heal and to help others heal as well. So thank you for that example. That's a good way to end this podcast. Thank you, Hanna.
Please feel free to leave a comment. If you like this video, click the like button. Remember to subscribe to our channel and don't forget to ring the bell.